What if the most important character in the amazing world of Gumball was someone nobody remembered? I mean that literally, not in a cute, underrated character way. Within the actual fiction of the show, within the rules of how Elmore operates, there was a character who walked the halls of Elmore Junior High, who had a face and a name, and presumably some kind of inner life, and the universe looked at him and said, "No, you don't matter," and it erased him, sent him to a dimension of pure static, and nobody in Elmore noticed he was gone. His name is Rob, and I have spent more hours thinking about Rob than any reasonable person should. But here's the thing, Rob isn't entirely what tonight is about. Or maybe he is. Look, what tonight is really about is the space between what the amazing world of Gumball shows you on the surface and what it's actually doing underneath. Because this show, this goofy, anarchic, mixed media cartoon about a blue cat and his pet fish who grew legs, has one of the deepest wells of fan theories of any animated show ever made. And I'm not talking about lazy creepypasta, Gumball is actually dead stuff. I'm talking about theories the show itself appears to confirm. Theories the creators have winked at. Theories that, once you see them, change every single episode you'll ever rewatch. So tonight, we're going deep. We're talking about the Void, a dimension that might be the most terrifying concept in children's television. We're talking about Banana Barbara and her paintings that predict a future that might not exist. We're talking about whether Elmore knows it's a TV show and what happens to a world when it starts to figure that out. We're talking about Rob's transformation from a nobody to a villain to something else entirely. And we're going to get into some theories I've never seen anyone else bring up. The kind that kept me staring at my ceiling at 3 in the morning. If you're watching this late at night, good. Get comfortable. Pull the blanket up. This is going to take a while. And honestly, these ideas hit different when it's dark outside and the rest of the world is quiet. There's something about Gumball that works better in the liminal hours. Maybe because the show itself lives in a liminal space. Between comedy and horror. Between kids' show and existential philosophy. Between cartoon logic and something much stranger. And if you haven't subscribed yet, it really does help us keep making these for you. Every sub means we can keep going deeper into shows like this. And trust me, we're nowhere near the bottom of what Gumball has to offer. Right, let's start where every good mystery starts. With something that looks completely normal until you realize it isn't. You know how every show has background characters? Those little figures who populate a school hallway or a city street to make the world feel lived in? In most cartoons, nobody thinks twice about them. They're scenery. They exist to fill space. And that's fine. But the amazing world of Gumball did something that, as far as I can tell, no other show has ever done. It asked the question, what happens to a background character who realizes they're a background character? No, the show premiered on Cartoon Network on May 3rd, 2011, with a sneak peek of the episode, The DVD. It officially launched on May 9th, 2011. Ben Bocquelet, the show's creator, is a French-British animator who'd been working at a London studio called Studio AKA, making characters for commercial pitches. And the origin story of Gumball is kinda perfect for everything we're going to talk about tonight. Bocquelet had spent years creating characters for ad pitches, and most of them got rejected. They never made it to air. They were purposeless. So when Cartoon Network Development Studio Europe opened in 2007, and employees were encouraged to pitch their own shows, Bocquelet did something genuinely inspired. He took all those rejected characters, the ones nobody wanted, and put them together in one show. His original pitch was a show about a remedial school for rejected cartoon characters, characters who'd been cast aside, learning how to be interesting enough to exist. And the producers told him no. They said the concept was too sad. I need you to sit with that for a second. The original DNA of this show, the very first seed of the idea, was about characters rejected by the world that made them, trying to justify their own existence. Daniel Leonard, Vice President of Original Series and Development at Turner Broadcasting Europe, thought the concept was too depressing and was looking for more family-friendly sitcoms. So Bocquelet retooled it. He created the Wattersons, named after Calvin and Hobbes creator Bill Watterson. He named the family members after his own relatives. Nicole for his mother, Richard for his father, Anais for his sister. He built Elmore as a bright American suburb where a blue cat could live next door to a T-Rex, where a sentient balloon could go to school with a puppet and a stop-motion cactus. But that original idea, the rejected characters, the ones who don't matter, the ones the world forgot, never went away. It burrowed into the show's DNA and waited. And when it finally resurfaced in season 3, it became the most important storyline the show ever told. It started with a locker that didn't exist. In the episode The Void, Season 3, Episode 12, the 88th episode overall, Gumball and Darwin are watching cheerleaders at the school stadium. Standard setup. The cheerleaders form a pyramid, collapse, and explode, because that's the kind of show this is. Then Mr. Small shows up wearing a tinfoil hat. He tells the boys things have been disappearing from Elmore, not in a normal way, in a way where nobody notices, where the evidence of the disappeared just stops being there. Darwin goes to his locker and sees lockers 115 and 117. But no 116, just a gap, a fold in reality where something should be. And when they look inside that gap, they find a photograph of themselves with someone they can't remember. A girl named Molly Collins, a gray sauropod who'd been in the show during Season 1 and then simply stopped appearing. In most shows, when a background character stops showing up, nobody thinks about it. Characters come and go. Voice actors leave. Writers forget. It's television. But Gumball took that mundane reality of TV production and asked, what if, within the world of the show, there was a reason characters disappeared? What if the universe was doing it on purpose? That's when they find the Void. I need you to picture this, because the visual design tells you everything. The Void is what happens when you take the analog static from a dead TV channel, the snow, the hiss, the visual noise, and stretch it in every direction to infinity. That's the sky, the ground, the walls, all static. And floating through this static, like debris after a shipwreck, are objects, pogo balls, laser discs, the mullet, jorts, a frog that looks like Crazy Frog, Pluto, because the world decided it wasn't a planet anymore. There are prototype character designs from the show's own early development, the Hindenburg, an early CGI Darwin model from the show's test reel, even characters from How to Rat-It-Wong Your Panda, the terrible fake movie from the episode The Treasure, and Molly, frozen in time like a paused video. This is where the show tells you the rules. The Void is where the universe sends its mistakes. Anything the world deems boring, useless, outdated, or wrong gets erased from reality, sent to the Void, and everyone's memory of it is wiped clean. The Void isn't just a place, it's a process. It's cosmic quality control with no appeals court. Now let me explain why this broke the fan community's brain. The most popular theory about the Void, and I think the show effectively confirms this by the time it ends, is that the Void is a metaphor for cancellation, for a show being pulled off the air. When the universe deems something a mistake, it doesn't destroy it. It stores it in infinite static. And what is static? It's what you see on your TV when nothing is broadcasting. The Void is the blank screen. It's what exists when there's no show. Everything inside it is everything that got left behind when the camera stopped rolling. That alone is wild enough for a kid's show. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Because when Gumball, Darwin, and Mr. Small are trying to escape the Void with Molly, the dimension fights back. It tries to seal the exit. It tries to keep them trapped, as if the Void has a will of its own, as if the universe doesn't want anyone to know this place exists. And after they escape, their tinfoil hats, the only things protecting their memories, get sucked back into the Void, and they forget everything. They forget the Void. They forget the rescue. They forget that reality has a garbage disposal for things it doesn't want anymore. The world of Elmore actively, deliberately, with clear intentionality, erased their knowledge of its own nature. I've rewatched this episode maybe 10 times putting this together, and each time, that ending hits different, because it raises a question the show never explicitly answers, but constantly gestures toward. Is Elmore aware that it's a TV show? And if it is, what does that awareness mean for the people living inside it? This is where we need to talk about the fan theory that I think sits at the center of everything. The idea that the amazing world of Gumball is a television show within its own universe, and that some characters know it while others don't. The evidence for this is not subtle. It's everywhere. It's woven into the fabric of the show so thoroughly that I honestly think it was always the plan, even if it took a few seasons for the pieces to come together. And the way the show builds this awareness across its run is itself a masterclass in long-form storytelling that doesn't get enough credit. Let me walk you through the progression, because the escalation is deliberate and kind of genius. In Season 1, the fourth wall breaks are mostly cosmetic. Characters glance at the camera. There are visual gags that only work if you acknowledge there's a screen. It's standard cartoon self-awareness. Looney Tunes did this 60 years ago. Nothing revolutionary. In Season 2, things start shifting. The finale, treats the episodic format as in-universe. The fact that the Wattersons never face consequences is literally the plot. And the show is acknowledging that its own structure has rules, and those rules have consequences. And The Job establishes that deviation from character archetypes threatens reality itself. These aren't just jokes anymore. They're the show building a cosmology. Season 3 is where it detonates. The Void introduces the concept of the universe as a sentient entity that manages its own content. The Nobody reintroduces Rob and establishes the idea that characters can be discarded by the narrative. The Oracle introduces prophetic paintings that map the show's future, including its end. And The Kids addresses the voice actor changes within the plot, acknowledging that the characters' voices changed because the real actors aged. The show is barely even pretending the fourth wall exists anymore. Season 4 ramps it up further. Then The Signal depicts the show's broadcast as directly affecting the character's reality. The Disaster has Rob explicitly stating that nothing in Elmore is real and using a TV remote to control the universe. By this point, the meta-awareness isn't subtext, it's the primary plot driver. Season 5 keeps pushing. The Test shows the universe rewriting itself when a character changes personality, complete with a laugh track and sitcom format. The X presents Gumball and Rob's nemesis relationship as a kind of toxic partnership where both parties are unhappy but can't leave. The Puppets brings in external fictional characters from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, suggesting other fictional realities exist alongside Elmore. And Season 6 brings it all to a head. The Future establishes that there is no future. The Inquisition shows the world beginning to end. And the Revival, with The Rewrite, establishes the ultimate rule. Awareness of the fiction means destruction of the fiction. What strikes me about this progression is how patient it is. Bacalé didn't dump the meta-mythology on the audience in Season 1. He spent 2 full seasons establishing the world as a relatively normal cartoon, and then gradually introduced the idea that the world itself is wrong. It's like the show is slowly waking up. Season 1 is a dream. Season 2 is the dream getting restless. Season 3 is the first gasp of consciousness. And by Season 6, the dream is a lucid nightmare. The fan community has mapped this progression meticulously. There are charts, there are spreadsheets. There are multi-hour video essays, other than this one, that track every fourth wall break across all 6 seasons and categorize them by type and intensity. And what those charts show is a clear, consistent, deliberate escalation. The show was always building toward the meta-narrative. It was always planning to tell the story of a world discovering it wasn't real. And here's a theory about that discovery process that I think is uniquely terrifying. What if the show's increasing self-awareness is what's attracting the void? Think about it. In Season 1, there's no void. Nobody's getting erased. The show is blissfully unconscious of itself. As the seasons progress and the characters get closer to understanding their fictional nature, the void becomes more present, more aggressive, more threatening. By Season 6, it's about to swallow everything. The theory: self-awareness is the disease. The void is the immune response. Every time a character gets too close to understanding the truth, the universe fights back harder. The show's meta-narrative is literally killing it. The more it knows about itself, the less time it has left. This creates an impossible paradox. The show's greatest artistic achievement, its meta-awareness, its philosophical depth, its willingness to question the nature of fiction, is also the thing that threatens to destroy it. If Gumball had stayed a simple, unaware cartoon, the void would never have been a threat. It's the show's intelligence that dooms it. And I think Bacalé might have known this from the beginning. And I think the remedial school idea, the original pitch about rejected characters, contained this paradox in embryonic form. A show about characters who know they've been rejected, who understand their own disposability, is a show that can't sustain the fiction of being carefree. The producers were right that it was too sad, but Bacalé found a way to tell that sad story inside a funny one, to build the melancholy into the structure rather than the surface. I have this theory that Bacalé's entire creative strategy with Gumball was a slow-motion version of what Rob does in The Inquisition. Rob tries to change the characters from cartoons to humans, to make them real enough to escape. Bacalé, across 6 seasons, gradually changed the show from a cartoon to something almost uncomfortably aware and human. He was sneaking depth past the censors of format, making the show more real 1 episode at a time, hoping that by the time anyone noticed, the characters would be real enough to survive their own cancellation. And maybe that's why the show keeps coming back. Maybe the fan theories, the video essays, the late night rewatches. Maybe all of that is the audience completing what Bacalé started. We're making these characters real by refusing to let them be fictional. We're pulling them out of the void every time we hit play. Okay, I realize I just went very far into the philosophical deep end, and some of you might be drowning. So let me bring us to the surface for a moment and talk about something more concrete. But I want to discuss one of the most ingenious aspects of Gumball that ties into all these theories, but doesn't get discussed enough in the fan theory space: the show's use of animation as storytelling. Gumball doesn't just use mixed media because it looks cool, although it absolutely does look cool. The animation choices are narrative choices. When a character's animation style changes, it means something. In The Shell, when Penny breaks free, she cycles through multiple animation styles: hand-drawn, CGI, photorealistic, even briefly abstract expressionist. Her transformation isn't just a character moment. It's the show demonstrating that identity isn't fixed, that you can be drawn one way and redrawn another, that the lines that define you aren't permanent. In The Disaster, when Rob uses the remote to manipulate reality, then the visual language changes with each button press. The aspect ratio changes create physical barriers. The slow motion effect makes everything look like a nature documentary. The brightness adjustment turns the world into a washed-out horror film. Every remote function has a corresponding visual grammar, and the grammar tells you how the world has been distorted. And in The Signal, the glitches, the visual artifacts, the cut edits, the replacement of character features with incongruous elements create a visual language of unreality that's genuinely disturbing. When Darwin's eyes briefly become photorealistic human eyes, it's not just creepy, it's the wrong layer of reality leaking through. It's the show's substrate, the live-action world beneath the animation, bleeding through the cartoon surface for a fraction of a second. Yet you're seeing what Darwin really looks like, and it's uncanny because he's not supposed to have a real look. He's supposed to be a drawing. The fan theory community has done incredible work analyzing these visual moments, and what they've found is that the show's visual disruptions are consistent. The same kind of static appears on Rob's body and in The Void. The same kind of glitching happens in The Signal, and during moments when characters approach fourth wall awareness. The show has a visual vocabulary for reality malfunction, and it uses it consistently across seasons. There's even a theory that the specific type of static matters. The Void static is analog, the kind you'd see on an old CRT television. This is different from digital compression artifacts or streaming glitches. And the show is set in a world that runs on analog broadcast technology, which means the threats to its reality are analog threats: signal interference, dead channels, lost frequencies. And this matters because the real world has moved past analog broadcast. We stream now. We don't get static anymore. We get loading wheels and error messages. So the Void, this dimension of analog static, is itself a relic of an older technology. It's a threat from the past. It's the kind of ending that a show on cable TV would face, not a show on a streaming platform. Which raises a fascinating question. Does moving from Cartoon Network to Hulu, from cable broadcast to streaming, change the Void? Is the threat different now? The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball premiered on Hulu on July 28th, 2025, which means these characters now exist in a different technological context. The rules might be different. The Void might look different. The way cancellation works in streaming, where shows are removed quietly from libraries rather than dramatically pulled from schedules, might correspond to a different kind of cosmic threat. I haven't seen this theory fully developed anywhere, but I think it's worth exploring. If the Void is the analog static of broadcast TV, then what's the streaming equivalent? Maybe it's not static. Maybe it's the algorithm. Maybe it's the way a show can exist on a platform and simply never be recommended to anyone. Not erased, technically still there, but effectively invisible, found only by people who already know to look for it. That's a different kind of forgetting. It's not the violent erasure of the Void, and it's the slow, quiet death of irrelevance. And in some ways, that might be worse. At least in the Void, the things that are erased still exist somewhere. In the algorithm, a show can technically be available and still be functionally gone. I don't know if the show will explore this, but I think the fan community is already sensing it. The way people talk about Gumball's legacy, The anxiety about whether the revival will get enough views to justify more seasons. The desperate need to keep the show visible and relevant. All of that is a response to the streaming era version of The Void. We're not afraid of static anymore. We're afraid of the recommendation algorithm deciding that nobody wants to watch a cartoon about a blue cat. Look at The Signal, Season 4, Episode 24. In this episode, Gumball starts glitching. Not metaphorically, literally glitching. His speech cuts out mid-sentence. Scenes jump forward without transition. Characters' faces distort with digital artifacts. Darwin's eyes briefly get replaced by photorealistic human eyes. And it is, I cannot stress this enough, one of the most viscerally disturbing images I've ever seen in a cartoon. The show plays it for horror, and it absolutely works. The episode frames this as satellite interference affecting Elmore, but the implication is clear. The character's reality is a broadcast signal. When the signal stutters, their world stutters. And at the end of the episode, Gumball and Darwin are on the verge of figuring this out. Gumball is about to say they're on TV, and then the episode glitches one final time. And suddenly, they're at the dinner table with the whole family, everyone laughing, as if nothing happened. Gumball and Darwin exchange a look. They know something is wrong, but they can't articulate it anymore. The world cut them off mid-realization. That last scene, I've watched it probably 30 times. The way Gumball and Darwin join in the laughter, but their eyes are different. There's this hollow quality to their smiles. They're laughing because the scene demands laughter, but some part of them knows the laughter isn't real. It's maybe 5 seconds of animation that carries more existential dread than most horror movies. And honestly, this scene makes me think about something that gets brought up a lot in the fan community. The idea that Gumball himself, on some subconscious level, has always known what he is. There's a fan theory, elaborated at length on the Gumball Wiki by a user who went deep into this. They're drawing from an economics paper by Robin Hanson called How to Live in a Simulation. Hanson's paper theorizes that people who know they're in a simulation would behave in specific ways. They'd be more reckless, more self-serving, more desperate to be entertaining. They'd try to stay personally interesting to whatever force is watching them, because being boring could mean being switched off. Sound like anyone we know? Gumball Watterson is reckless to an absurd degree. He's self-serving. He's constantly at the center of chaos. And the show has demonstrated multiple times that when Gumball stops being entertaining, when he tries to suppress his critical, sarcastic personality, the universe literally starts rewriting itself around him. That's The Test, Season 5, Episode 8. Gumball takes an online personality quiz that labels him a loser. He decides to stop being cynical, to be nicer, and immediately, Tobias Wilson starts taking over as the main character. The show's format changes. A laugh track appears. The visual style shifts to something that looks like a cheap 90s sitcom. Sarah G. Lotto, who is herself a fan character within the show, an ice cream cone who's an obsessive fan of Gumball and Darwin, identifies exactly what's happening. She calls it the grand sitcom of our lives, and she says it without any surprise at all. This is what gets me. Sarah has always known. She provides musical cues between scenes with her tape recorder. She hums the closing credits theme, which Gumball doesn't recognize because he's never heard the show's own music from the outside. In The Fan, she exhibits behaviors that only make sense if she's aware that she's a character in a show. The fan theory that Sarah has always been aware of the fourth wall is one of those theories that's so well supported, it barely even counts as a theory anymore. It's practically canon. And here's the thing about this particular rabbit hole. Once you start pulling on this thread, everything unravels. Because the amazing world of Gumball has an internal mythology about its own fictional nature that is more detailed and more consistent than some sci-fi show's entire world building. Let me map it out. The Void is the space that exists when the show isn't airing. It contains everything that the narrative has discarded. Failed character designs, canceled plot lines, cultural references that stopped being relevant. The characters who stopped being useful to the story. The world erases people's memories of these things because the world needs to maintain the illusion that it's real, that things don't just disappear because a writer decided they weren't funny anymore. Rob, the character I mentioned at the start, is a former background character who was exiled to the Void because the show didn't need him. He's the only person who consistently remembers the Void exists. He's the only person who has fully confronted the fact that his reality is a television show. And in The Rewrite, the Season 7 finale, that's the revival series, The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball, which premiered on Hulu on July 28th, 2025. We learn the ultimate rule of this universe. If the main characters discover that their lives are fictional, the void will destroy everything. The show's existence depends on the characters not knowing they're in a show. The moment they figure it out for real, it's over. The broadcast ends. The static swallows everything. Think about what that means. Every time Gumball has almost figured out the truth and been cut off, in the signal, in the test, in the multiple moments across 6 seasons where the fourth wall has bent almost to breaking, the universe was protecting itself, not protecting Gumball, protecting the show. Because if the characters achieve full awareness of their fictional nature, there's no more show to protect. I need a minute to talk about how this theory reframes Rob's entire arc, because it's one of the most fascinating character journeys in animation, and I don't think enough people appreciate how carefully it was constructed. Rob first appears in Season 1 as a background character. He's a tall, slim, blue cyclops with one big eye and auburn hair. He has almost no lines. He's in the background of school scenes. He's exactly the kind of character you'd never notice. In The Pony, a Season 3 episode, Gumball and Darwin run into Rob on the sidewalk. Rob greets them enthusiastically. He thinks they're friends, and they can't even remember his name. Darwin kicks him into a manhole because he's being annoying about wanting them to remember who he is. That might be the cruelest thing that's ever happened in this show, and it's played for laughs, which is itself a commentary the show is making about how main characters treat background characters like they don't matter, because in the logic of a TV show, they don't. Rob was in the void during the events of The Void. When Gumball, Darwin, and Mr. Small came to rescue Molly, Rob was right there. He saw them. He tried to get their attention, but they passed right by him without noticing, because they were focused on Molly. Even in a dimension specifically designed to hold forgotten characters, Rob was too forgettable to be rescued, but he managed to escape by grabbing onto the back of Mr. Small's van, Janice, as it launched out of the void back to Elmore, and the escape damaged him. When we see Rob next, in The Nobody, Season 3, Episode 36, he's physically broken. Parts of his body are missing, replaced by static. The same analog TV static that fills the void. It's textured onto his skin like a wound. He's become a living glitch, a walking piece of television interference. And he's been living in the Wattersons' basement for months. Nobody noticed. I mean, that detail alone. He's been living in the protagonist's house, surviving off scraps he steals from the family, and not a single Watterson registered his existence. The Wattersons didn't even know they had a basement. That's how unimportant Rob is to the world. He can inhabit the same physical space as the main characters, and reality itself won't acknowledge it. When Gumball and Darwin finally find him, Rob has amnesia. He doesn't know who he is. He says he's a nobody. He has no identity, no family, no purpose. He shouldn't even exist. And then Gumball and Darwin, in an act of cheerful obliviousness that's either heartwarming or horrifying depending on how you look at it, then suggest that since all the other character roles in Elmore are taken, the funny one, the smart one, the love interest, the only role left for Rob is villain. And that's when his memories come back. He remembers being left in the void. He remembers calling for help while Gumball and Darwin walked right past him. He remembers the pain of escaping, and he says, "You left me disfigured, a nobody, but now you've given me a part to play in the world." He swears to be their nemesis, and Gumball and Darwin just walk away, glad they could help. Okay, so here's where I want to talk about a theory that I've never seen articulated in quite this way, and it's the one that's been bouncing around my head ever since I started researching this video. The theory is this: Rob is the show's original concept come back to haunt it. Remember what I said earlier about Bakalay's original pitch? A remedial school for rejected cartoon characters. Characters who'd been thrown away by the industry, trying to find purpose. The producers said it was too sad, and Bakalay made the show lighter. But Rob is that concept. He's a rejected character. He was thrown away by the world. He's disfigured and desperate and trying to find his purpose. He's literally living the premise that Bakalay was told was too depressing for television, and the show is treating him as a villain for it. Let me say that again, because I think it's genuinely profound. The original concept for the show, the one that was deemed too sad to exist, came back as the show's main antagonist. The idea that was rejected became a character who was rejected, and his entire motivation is rage at the world that rejected him. I have never, in years of watching cartoons, seen a show do something this meta and this emotionally coherent at the same time. And I honestly think it might have been intentional. The Gumball Wiki notes that Rob's arc as a discarded, self-aware fictional character mirrors the original concept for the series. Ben Bacalé initially pitched the show as being about rejected characters at a remedial school. Whether Bacalé designed Rob with this parallel in mind, or whether it emerged organically from the show's DNA, the result is the same. Rob embodies the road not taken. He's what the show would have been about if the producers hadn't intervened. And that makes his villainy tragic in a way that goes beyond the usual cartoon antagonist. Rob isn't evil because he wants power or money or world domination. He's evil because it's the only role that justifies his existence. In The Disaster, Season 4, Episode 40, the season finale, he tells Gumball something that I genuinely find devastating. I never wanted to be the villain. I wanted to be the cute sidekick who gets his own plush toy and spin-off show. He wanted to matter. He wanted to be merchandise. He wanted to be loved by kids the way Gumball is loved. But the narrative gave him no choice. In a show where the protagonist is already defined, where the best friend is already cast, where every positive role is spoken for, the only slot left was antagonist. Rob didn't choose villainy. The structure of narrative itself forced it on him. I want to pause here because I think this crystallizes why Rob's arc resonates so deeply with the fan community. There's a concept in literary criticism called the character function. The idea that characters in stories aren't people, they're functions. The hero function, the mentor function, the antagonist function. Characters serve the story's needs, not their own. Most shows don't acknowledge this. They pretend their characters are autonomous beings making free choices. But Gumball rips that pretense apart. Rob explicitly tells us he was forced into the villain function because all the other functions were occupied. He doesn't have free will, he has a role, and the role was assigned by a universe that doesn't care what he wants. Once you see this, you can't unsee it in other media. Every villain in every story is someone the narrative needed to be the bad guy. Every sidekick is someone the narrative needed to provide support. They didn't volunteer, they were drafted. And Gumball is the only show I've ever seen that treats this draft as the injustice it is. When Rob says he wanted to be the cute sidekick who gets his own plush toy, he's expressing something genuinely heartbreaking. He wants to be loved, not feared, not hated, not forgotten, loved. He wants a kid somewhere to have a Rob action figure on their shelf, right next to Gumball and Darwin. He wants to be merchandise, because merchandise means you matter. Merchandise means someone chose you. Merchandise means you're not a mistake. And the show never gives him that. Not really. He gets complexity. He gets an arc. And he gets to be arguably the most interesting character in the series. But he doesn't get the lunchbox. He doesn't get the plush. He gets wiki pages and fan theories, and late-night video essays. He gets appreciated by the kind of people who think deeply about cartoons, a smaller and quieter kind of love than what Gumball gets, but real. And maybe for Rob, that has to be enough. Interestingly, Jacob Hopkins, who voiced Gumball for part of the series, has said that Rob is his favorite character from the show. Even the person who played the hero recognizes that the villain is the more compelling figure. That says something about what Gumball accomplishes with this character. And this is where the fan theory about the universe's sentience gets really dark. Because if Elmore is aware that it's a TV show, and if it actively manages its characters to keep the show running smoothly, erasing those who aren't useful, wiping memories that threaten the illusion, then Rob's arc suggests something terrible about how stories treat the characters trapped inside them. Stories need villains. Someone has to be the bad guy, and the person who gets chosen for that role doesn't get a say in the matter. I think about this every time I rewatch The Nemesis, Season 4, Episode 1, the season premiere. In this episode, Rob has been trying to be Gumball and Darwin's villain, and failing spectacularly. He's built 563 traps, all of which have failed. He's so bad at being evil that Gumball and Darwin take pity on him and decide to help him become a better villain. They alter his voice, give him a cardboard costume, and rename him Dr. Wrecker. They coin him a catchphrase, "You just got wrecked." And then Dr. Wrecker tries to flood Elmore by destroying the town's dam with a wrecking ball. He makes a dramatic, villainous entrance. He swings the wrecking ball, and he destroys a vending machine. Because Elmore doesn't have a dam. It was never there. Look, this scene is hilarious. Genuinely, incredibly funny. But underneath the comedy is something that makes me ache a little. Rob can't even be a villain correctly because the world won't give him the props. There's no dam to destroy because the show never bothered to build one. The set design of Elmore doesn't include the infrastructure needed for his evil plan to work. He's trying to play a role in a world that hasn't even furnished the stage for him. But then, something happens at the end of the episode that shifts the dynamic. Gumball and Darwin, feeling sorry for Rob, deliberately walk into one of his earlier traps. They let themselves get caught. They hang upside down and beg him to help them down. And Rob looks at them and starts laughing, sadistically, and walks away, leaving them hanging there. It's the first genuine moment of successful villainy he's ever had, and it came from the heroes choosing to lose. There's a fan theory I've seen about this moment. The idea that Gumball and Darwin don't just feel sorry for Rob. They understand, on some level, that the show needs a villain, that the narrative structure of their lives requires someone to be the antagonist. And if Rob can't fill that role, the universe will find someone else. Or worse, then the lack of a villain will make the show boring, and a boring show gets canceled. And cancellation means the void swallows everything. By helping Rob become Dr. Wrecker, Gumball and Darwin might be unconsciously protecting themselves. They're maintaining the narrative structure that keeps their world alive. Okay, I'm going to shift gears here, because I want to talk about one of the most underappreciated elements of the show's lore: Banana Barbara's prophetic paintings. Banana Barbara is Banana Joe's mother. She's a banana. She wears a bow on her head, and in the future, Season 6, Episode 34, we learn the bow is actually holding her together, keeping her from peeling. She used to be smart and competent, but after working at Chanax Inc., she suffered a burnout and became the vague, spacey character we know. But here's her thing. She can paint the future. Not maybe, not metaphorically. She literally paints events before they happen, and those events come true with absolute precision. This ability first shows up in The Shell, Season 3, Episode 20, the episode where Penny breaks out of her shell and reveals her true shape-shifting form. In the background of that episode, hidden in Banana Barbara's room, are paintings that depict events from future episodes, including a painting of Gumball appearing naked at the mall. That painting becomes the focus of The Oracle, Season 3, Episode 31, where Gumball discovers Barbara's paintings at a yard sale and realizes every single one has come true. His painting shows him naked on the mall on national television. He spends the entire episode trying to prevent it from happening. And in one of the show's most elegant pieces of writing, every action he takes to prevent the prophecy is exactly what causes it to come true. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And Aeneas even points this out at the end. Would any of this have happened if they hadn't seen the painting? But then, the episode does something that chilled me the first time I saw it, and still chills me now. After the family goes home and reflects on the nature of destiny, the scene cuts to Banana Barbara in her garage. She's finishing a new painting, and this painting shows the entire Watterson family running through Elmore as the world collapses into the void around them. She finishes it. She puts down her brush, and she turns to the camera with this slow, enigmatic smile. That smile. I've thought about that smile more than any facial expression in any cartoon I've ever watched, because it's not a happy smile. It's not a sad smile. It's a knowing smile. It's the smile of someone who sees the future and has accepted it, and knows that you, the viewer, are now seeing it too. And the painting itself, The Wattersons in the Void, doesn't come true during the original series run. It's a prophecy that hangs over the entire rest of the show. Seasons 4, 5, and 6 all unfold with this painting lurking in the background, a promise of an ending that hasn't arrived yet. Every fan who's watched the show knows about this painting, and everyone has a theory about what it means. The most common interpretation is straightforward. The painting depicts the show's cancellation. The void will swallow Elmore when the show ends, and the Wattersons will be consumed along with everything else. Barbara painted the end of their world, and that end is the end of their show. But there's a more nuanced theory that I find more compelling, and it has to do with what Banana Barbara says at the end of The Future. In that episode, which aired deep in Season 6, when the show was already confirmed to be ending, Rob kidnaps Banana Barbara and forces her to paint the future. But every time she paints, all she produces is static, over and over. The same analog TV static that fills the void. Rob gets frustrated. He keeps telling her to paint the future, and she keeps painting nothing but static, because the static is the future. After the show ends, there's nothing to broadcast. The future is a dead channel. And at the end of the episode, and after Gumball and Darwin rescue Barbara and erase Rob from existence using her painting, they literally paint over him and he ceases to be, which is terrifying. They ask her to paint Rob back into reality, because they feel bad about erasing him. She does, but he comes back inside a painting of the void. He's back where he started, trapped in the dimension of static. Gumball says they'll see Rob in the future, and Banana Barbara says the line that every Gumball fan knows by heart, but there is no future. And then the screen cuts to static, and for a fraction of a second, there's a silhouette visible in the noise. The outline of Superintendent Evil, a character who won't appear until the series finale, the Inquisition, which was still multiple episodes away when the future aired. Here's the fan theory that gives me chills. I've seen it discussed in fragments across Reddit and TikTok and the Gumball Wiki, but I want to put it all together because I don't think anyone's connected every piece. Banana Barbara isn't just predicting the future, she's writing it. The Shell established that she can paint things that come true. The Oracle showed that trying to prevent her paintings only ensures they happen, but the future adds a new dimension. In that episode, it's established that she can paint things into existence and erase them the same way. She erases Rob by painting over him. She can literally reshape reality with her art. So the question becomes, is she predicting the future or is she causing it? Are her paintings prophecies or instructions? And if she's causing the future, then the painting of the Wattersons in the void isn't a warning. It's a sentence. There's an incredible theory chain that starts from this premise. It goes like this. Barbara was driven mad by overwork at Chanax Inc., a corporation run by Mr. Chanax, who appears to be some kind of corporate overlord. Her burnout wasn't just psychological, it fundamentally altered her relationship to reality. She became an interface between the show's narrative and its characters. She can see the script, she can edit the script, and she might be the only character other than Rob who understands what the show actually is. But here's the twist in this theory. Barbara doesn't want to save anyone. She looks at Elmore and sees a world where things get erased for being boring, where characters are tortured for entertainment, where the laws of physics and morality are subordinated to comedy. And she's decided that the whole thing is a mistake. Her paintings of the void consuming Elmore aren't just predictions, they're wishes. She wants the show to end because she understands that existence inside a cartoon is a form of suffering. Now I want to be clear, I'm not saying this is definitively what the creators intended, but the pieces fit in a way that's hard to ignore. Barbara's eerily calm demeanor, her knowing smiles at the camera, her statement that there is no future. These all suggest a character who has accepted something the others haven't. She's not afraid of the void. She paints it with steady hands. She might even be inviting it. I actually have a theory about this that I've never seen anyone else bring up, and it's the one that makes me the most uneasy. Here it is. What if Banana Barbara is the audience? You think about it. She watches events unfold from a remove. She has knowledge of the future, the way someone who's seen a show's trailer or read spoilers would. She can influence events, but primarily observes them. She creates images of the characters' suffering and their doom, and she derives a kind of quiet satisfaction from it. We, the viewers, watch cartoon characters get hurt for entertainment. We know the show will end someday. We've seen the spoilers, the teasers, the preview images, and we keep watching with a kind of placid acceptance. We are the force that creates these characters' reality, and will eventually discard it. Barbara, with her paintings and her prophetic knowledge and her calm acceptance of the end, is the show's portrait of us. I don't know if Ben Bacalé intended this, but I think about it every time I watch the show, and it makes me look at my own relationship to these characters differently. Alright, let me take a breath. If you've made it this far, you're probably starting to feel what I felt when I went down this rabbit hole. That dizzying sensation of a show that has way more going on than anyone gives it credit for. And we haven't even gotten to the big stuff yet, because I need to talk about The Disaster and The Rerun. These are the two episodes that broke the show open. The Disaster is the season 4 finale, episode 40, the 156th episode overall. The Rerun is the season 5 premiere, episode 1. Together, they form a two-part story that is, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, one of the best pieces of storytelling in the history of Western animation. Show the setup, Rob purchases a universal remote from the Awesome Store, a mysterious van that sells magical items. The remote costs $12.99. And it doesn't just control TVs, it controls reality. Every button on the remote does exactly what you'd expect, but applied to the physical world. Pause freezes time. Rewind turns back the clock. Fast forward ages people. Subtitles create text that appears beneath people as they speak. Aspect ratio physically changes the dimensions of the screen, which Rob uses as a weapon. He changes the aspect ratio to slam Gumball repeatedly against the screen borders. Volume changes how loud reality is. And AV, the input button, opens a portal to the void. Rob's plan is methodical and devastating. He doesn't just want to hurt Gumball, and he wants to destroy everything Gumball loves so that Gumball understands what it feels like to lose everything that matters to you. He uses the subtitles function to make Darwin think Gumball secretly sees him as a glorified pet. He turns off the parental filter on Nicole and Richard, removing their internal censors, and they immediately tear into each other with such raw honesty that their marriage collapses in minutes. He manipulates Penny into thinking Gumball betrayed her, and then, when Gumball is alone and broken, Rob opens a portal to the void and tries to push him in. And during all of this, Rob says the line that changes everything. You really don't get it, do you? So happy to star in your amazing world. Can't you see that none of this is real? That's it. That's the moment. Rob doesn't just break the fourth wall, he shatters it and makes Gumball look through the hole. He tells the protagonist of the show that his world is fiction, that everything he loves, everything he's fighting for, is a construct, that his amazing world is a set, and the way Gumball reacts is what sells it. He doesn't laugh it off. He doesn't dismiss it. You can see it on his face, this terrified recognition. Like part of him always knew, but had been protected from knowing. And then Rob shoves him toward the void, and as Gumball falls in, the credits start rolling on the edges of the portal, because the portal to the void is the TV screen. Gumball is falling out of the show. He hits rewind at the last second, sending both himself and the audience back to the start of the episode. And that's the season 4 finale. And to be continued. I remember the first time I watched this, and I just sat there afterward in silence, because the show had just told me, in the most explicit terms possible, that Gumball's world is a TV show within a TV show, and that the borders of his reality are literally the edges of a screen. And it did this in an episode that was also genuinely funny, packed with visual comedy and wordplay and slapstick. That tonal range, from belly laughs to existential horror in the same 11 minutes, is something almost no other show can pull off. The rerun takes everything further. Gumball, now armed with foreknowledge of Rob's plan, tries to prevent the disaster, but he makes things worse, much worse. He accidentally rewinds his parents into babies, which causes Anais to start fading from existence. Because if their parents are too young to have had children, the children were never born. One by one, Anais's limbs disappear. Darwin, who was adopted rather than born, doesn't fade. He devolves back into a normal fish and begins suffocating because he's out of water. And Gumball watches his family disappear. His sister vanishes completely, and he can barely remember she existed. His brother writhes on the ground, gasping, losing everything that made him more than a pet store goldfish. His parents are infants, crying on the floor. Then Gumball beats Rob. He gets the remote and blasts Rob into the void. And he says a one-liner, "You shouldn't have pressed my buttons," and immediately feels terrible about it. He looks at the devastation around him and says, out loud, "I've become the villain. I just doomed a guy with no friends or family to an eternity in limbo and made a stupid quip about it." So he goes into the void to save Rob. He jumps into the static willingly, and he finds Rob floating among the mistakes. Socks and sandals, the helicopter ejector seat, prototypes and failures and cast-offs. Rob tells him to leave. He says this is where he belongs, with the rest of the universe's mistakes. He says his story as a villain should end in defeat. He accepts his own disposability, and Gumball refuses to leave. He chases Rob through the void, trying to rescue someone who doesn't believe they deserve to be rescued. And eventually, Rob stops running, and he looks at Gumball, this idiot blue cat who left him in the static and forgot his name a dozen times and treated his entire existence as a joke. And he sees that Gumball genuinely cares. Not because Rob matters to the plot, because Rob matters to Gumball. Rob can't bring himself to use the remote against Gumball. He decides to fix everything by rewinding time himself, but doing this will erase their reconciliation. They won't be friends anymore. Rob will go back to being the villain, because that's where the timeline puts him. Gumball hugs him and says with this incredible mix of sadness and humor, "I look forward to being your enemy again in the future." Rob rewinds time. Everything is undone. The Wattersons drive to the mall, singing. Nobody remembers anything. Rob destroys the remote, calling it too dangerous to exist. Ed and the awesome store owner calls after him, "That remote was $12.99. I've thought about this two-parter more than almost anything else in animation. And the fan theory it generates is one that I think defines the entire show. The theory, Gumball and Rob's relationship is the central metaphor of the show. The protagonist and the background character. The hero and the forgotten one. The character the audience loves. And the character the audience doesn't even see. Their dynamic encapsulates everything the show is saying about how stories work. That for every character who gets to be the star, there's someone who gets erased. And the star might not even notice. But here's the additional layer that hits me hardest. In the rerun, after all the pain and destruction and terror, Rob chooses to sacrifice his friendship with Gumball to protect the timeline. He goes back to being the villain because the story needs a villain. He surrenders his humanity, his one genuine connection, because the narrative structure demands it. Rob is the most selfless character in the show, and nobody in Elmore will ever know it, because the only person who witnessed his sacrifice won't remember it happened. That's enough to make you cry. But the show doesn't linger on it. It cuts to the Wattersons singing in the car. The comedy resumes. Life goes on. And that tonal shift from genuine tragedy to bouncy family comedy in 3 seconds might be the most Gumball thing there is. Because that's what the show keeps telling us. The machinery of entertainment doesn't care about the individual parts. The show must go on. The characters can suffer in one scene and be fine in the next because continuity of emotion isn't as important as continuity of entertainment. There's a fan theory I want to touch on that sits adjacent to all of this, and it's about Gumball's relationship to aging and time. Gumball is 12 years old. He's been 12 years old for 6 seasons and a revival. The show has acknowledged this directly. In The Kids, Season 3, Episode 1, Gumball and Darwin's voices literally change mid-episode because their voice actors hit puberty. The show handles the voice actor recasting within the narrative itself. Gumball and Darwin's voices drop. They freak out about it, and then the world resets their voices to normal. They stay 12. The world won't let them grow up. The fan theory, Gumball can't age because the show needs him to be a kid, and the Void knows it. If Gumball turned 13, if he became a teenager, the fundamental premise of the show would change. It would stop being a kid's show about a 12-year-old cat. And a show that changes its premise too dramatically is a show that risks cancellation. Cancellation means the Void consumes everything. So the universe keeps Gumball frozen. It lets him have adventures, lets him learn lessons that he'll forget by the next episode, lets him experience things that would traumatize a real child, and then resets him to baseline. Because that's what the audience expects. That's what the format demands. The kid has to stay a kid, or the show dies. And here's the extension of this theory that I find deeply unsettling. If this is true, then Gumball is a prisoner. He's trapped in a 12-year-old body, in a world that will literally erase him if he becomes boring, forced to generate entertainment forever or face annihilation. His recklessness, his chaos, his desperate need to be at the center of every disaster. It's not a personality trait. It's a survival strategy. He has to be the star, because the alternative is the Void. The TV Tropes Fan Theories page for Gumball has a version of this that I think is stated perfectly. Gumball is the actual center of the world. Without him, Elmore loses its integrity. But this all hinges on him being a silly, overexcitable, mischievous kid. Puberty could render him unfit for this role. And Barbara's line, "There is no future," suddenly has another meaning. There's no future because Gumball can never grow up. There's no future because the show's format doesn't allow for one. But the characters exist in an eternal present, entertaining us. And when we stop being entertained, they'll be swallowed by static. I know this is heavy. I know we're deep into it now. So let me shift into something slightly lighter. Though in this show, lighter is a relative term. I want to talk about the fan theories around Elmore itself, because the town has its own mysteries that are separate from, but connected to, the meta-narrative stuff. Elmore is described as a fictional American city in California. It has a school, a mall, suburbs, a junkyard, a forest. Standard small-town cartoon setting. But fans have noticed things about Elmore that don't add up. First, there's almost no sign of any other town existing. Characters occasionally reference the outside world, but Elmore feels hermetically sealed. There's Richwood High, and the neighboring school that appears in The Sweaters, and there are references to other places. But Elmore operates as if it's the only real place in existence, which, if it's a TV set, it is. Sets don't have neighboring towns. They have edges. Second, the population of Elmore is bizarre, even by cartoon standards. You've got 2D hand-drawn characters living alongside 3D CGI characters. You've got puppets interacting with stop-motion creatures. You've got photorealistic objects like oranges and potatoes coexisting with stylized anime-inspired characters. Sussy, one of the most memorable characters on the show, is a live-action puppet, a real human chin and mouth with googly eyes stuck on, puppeted to move like a cartoon character. She exists in the same reality as a two-dimensional ghost and a three-dimensional dinosaur. The standard explanation for this visual chaos is that Ben Bacalé designed the show to be a big sandbox, as he's described it in interviews. In a conversation with Animation Scoop, he said it's basically designed to be a big sandbox with all sorts of toys that you can use. And you can integrate other toys because it's such a mess visually in the first place that it doesn't look out of place when you bring something new into it. But the fan theory reframes this. The different animation styles aren't just an aesthetic choice. They're a reflection of each character's level of reality. The more real a character looks, the closer they are to existing outside the show. Sussy, who is literally a live-action element, is the most real character in Elmore. She's a piece of the world beyond the cartoon bleeding through. And in The Weirdo, Season 5, Episode 10, the show basically confirms that Sussy is more real than anyone else. She's the only character who doesn't fit any of the social categories Elmore uses. She's the only one who seems completely comfortable in her own skin. She might be the only character who's not acting. Meanwhile, the 2D characters, the ones who are the most obviously drawn, are the least real. They're the most vulnerable to being erased, the most subject to the whims of the animation. They're closer to the surface of the fiction. This creates a hierarchy of existence within Elmore that has troubling implications. The characters who are most aware they're in a show: Rob, with his static texture; Sussy, with her live-action body; Sarah, with her knowledge of narrative tropes, are also the characters most displaced from the town's mainstream. They're outsiders, weirdos. The show literally labels Sussy the weirdo. Self-awareness in Elmore correlates with social isolation. Knowing you're in a cartoon makes you lonely. Here's another theory about Elmore's geography that I've seen discussed and that I think deserves more attention. It has to do with the Awesome Store. The Awesome Store is a van that appears throughout the series, selling mysterious and dangerous items. It's where Richard bought Darwin as a regular goldfish. It's where he bought the evil turtle. It's where Rob bought the universal remote. The store is run by a shady man, literally called the Shady Man, or the van shopkeeper, who appears to have supernatural knowledge of the show's reality. In The Rewrite, we learn that the Shady Man was the one who saved Rob from the void after the events of the Inquisition. The Shady Man has a cross-dimensional laptop that can edit the show's script. He has been aware that Elmore is fictional the entire time, and at the end of the episode, he retires, passing the Awesome Store and the responsibility of protecting Elmore from the void onto Rob. The fan theory: the Awesome Store is a metatextual element. It sells items that break the rules of the show's reality, items that give characters power over the narrative. The universal remote literally controls the universe like a TV. The items in the store are narrative tools, props from the meta layer of the show's construction, leaking into the fiction. And the Shady Man is either a writer, a producer, or some representation of the creative team behind the show. He can edit the script. He knows the characters are fictional. He's been managing the show from inside the show, making sure it keeps running, patching plot holes, literal plot holes, when they appear. In The Rewrite, there's a scene where the Shady Man's poorly written script changes, create increasingly absurd obstacles for Gumball and Darwin. Hector accidentally licks the school bus instead of kicking it because the Shady Man typed lick instead of kick. A train bridge appears from nowhere. The script is being written badly, in real time, and the characters are forced to act it out regardless of whether it makes sense. This is the show depicting its own writing process as a chaotic, error-prone, improvised mess, and the characters have to live through every bad draft, every typo, every moment where the writer's hand slips. They don't get to say, "This doesn't make sense." They just have to keep going, because the show doesn't stop. Okay, I want to bring us back to something I touched on earlier and go deeper with it, because I think it's the key to understanding why Gumball's fan theories feel different from other shows' fan theories. Most cartoon fan theories are about decoding a hidden dark reality beneath the cheerful surface. Rugrats are dead. The Powerpuff Girls are failed experiments. You know the type. They take a light show and impose darkness on it from the outside. The theories are usually more interesting than the evidence supports. Gumball's fan theories are different because the show itself is generating them. The show is actively, deliberately, with full creative intentionality, erasing questions about the nature of its own reality. The void isn't a fan invention. It's a canonical location with clearly established rules. Rob's awareness of the fourth wall isn't subtext, it's text. The show's meta-commentary isn't hidden, it's the actual plot of multiple episodes. This means that when fans theorize about Gumball, they're not fighting against the show's intentions, they're extending them. The show opens doors, and fans walk through them. And because the show's creative team, Bocalé, along with writers like James Lamont and John Foster, and later Matt Lazell and Eric Fountain on the revival, have consistently demonstrated that they think about these implications deeply, fans can reasonably expect that even their wilder theories might align with the creator's thinking. There's one theory in particular that I think deserves special attention because it ties together almost everything we've discussed. I've seen it called different things, but I'll call it the cancellation theory. And it goes like this. The entire overarching plot of the amazing world of Gumball, from season 3 through the revival, is the show's own attempt to prevent its cancellation. Not metaphorically, not thematically, the actual plot. The void consumes things when they become irrelevant. Characters get erased when they stop being useful. Barber's paintings show a future of static, a future where there's nothing on the air. Rob tries to save the cast by turning them into live-action humans in The Inquisition, the season 6 finale, should the 240th and final episode of the original series, because he believes that if the characters become real, they can escape to the other place before the void destroys their world. He doesn't explain what the other place is, but the implication is clear. It's another show, another network, another reality where they can continue to exist. Rob fails. The void opens up beneath Elmore Junior High. The floor collapses. Rob falls in, screaming, and the show freeze frames on his descent as the credits play. That was the original series finale, left as a cliffhanger, because in the real world, the show was ending. Bocalé had announced his departure after season 6, and the movie that was supposed to resolve the cliffhanger kept getting delayed. For years, the Gumball fandom lived with this image, their favorite villain, and the character who'd tried harder than anyone to save the world, falling into infinite static while the credits rolled. And then, in 2025, The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball premiered on Hulu on July 28th, with Bocalé returning alongside new showrunner Matt Lazell and series director Eric Fountain. 40 new episodes, and the rewrite, the season 7 finale, directly addressed everything. It showed the Shady Man rescuing Rob from the void. It showed the establishment of the rule that if characters discover they're fictional, the void will destroy everything. And it ended with Rob taking over the awesome store, tasked with protecting Elmore from the inside. The cancellation theory says, all of this happened because the show was fighting for its own survival. When Cartoon Network's future was uncertain, when shows were being removed from Max in 2024, when the Gumball movie kept getting delayed, the void was growing stronger because the real-world threat of cancellation was growing stronger. And when Hulu picked up the revival, the void was pushed back, at least temporarily. Rob was saved because the show was saved. The characters don't know this. They can't know this. If they knew, the knowledge itself would trigger the void. But the audience can see it. We can see the show's real-world production history playing out as mythology within the fiction. I think this might be the most sophisticated piece of meta-storytelling in the history of children's animation. And I say that fully aware of how hyperbolic it sounds. But name another show that turned its own production challenges into in-universe existential threats. Name another show where the network's scheduling decisions are literally the apocalypse. Here's something else that feeds into the cancellation theory that I think deserves attention. The show's voice actor changes, which happened multiple times across the series because the child actors aged, are themselves part of the meta-narrative. In The Kids, Gumball and Darwin's voices drop because their real-world voice actors hit puberty. The show incorporated this real-world production issue into the plot, and the resolution was the universe resetting their voices to match the new actors. Within the meta framework, this is the show performing maintenance on itself. A character's voice changing would break the illusion. It would remind the audience that these aren't real people. They're performances by actors who age and change and eventually leave. So the show wrote an episode about the voice change, acknowledged it, dealt with it, and moved on. It used narrative to patch a production problem, which is exactly what Rob and the Shady Man do with the script editing laptop in The Rewrite. They're performing the same function as the show's writing room, fixing problems in real time, keeping the fiction intact. And this connects to another observation that I think is underappreciated. Gumball cycled through multiple voice actors for the lead role. Logan Grove for seasons 1 through early season 3, Jacob Hopkins from Season 3 through early Season 5, Nicholas Cantu from mid-Season 5 through Season 6, and then Alcayo Thile for the revival. Each transition was handled within the show's fiction to varying degrees. The fan theory is that every voice change is a minor apocalypse for the character. Each time, the character's fundamental nature shifts slightly. They're the same character in name and appearance, but something ineffable has changed, and the universe has to work harder each time to maintain the illusion of continuity. Think about how disorienting that would be if you were aware of it. Imagine waking up one day and your voice is different. Not puberty different, replacement different. The quality, the timbre, the way you shape words, changed by an external force for reasons you can't understand. And everyone around you acts like nothing happened because the universe wiped their memory of the old voice. That's what happens to Gumball every time they recast him. And the show knows it, and it plays with it, and it never fully explains it, because explaining it would mean acknowledging the fourth wall, and acknowledging the fourth wall means the void. Let me come back to Rob one more time, because his arc in the revival adds something to the fan theory landscape that I think changes how we read the entire series. In the rewrite, after being rescued from the void, Rob is given the shady man's job. He becomes the owner of the awesome store. He gets the cross-dimensional laptop that can edit the show's script. And his mission is simple: protect Elmore from the void by making sure nobody discovers the truth. To do this, Rob has to be the villain again. And he has to create a distraction, a false crisis, so that Gumball and Darwin don't follow the trail of plot holes that would lead them to the truth about their reality. He literally frames himself as the bad guy, so the heroes have something to fight instead of investigating the actual conspiracy. And this is devastating, because it means Rob's villainy was never about anger, not really. From the moment he understood the nature of Elmore's reality, everything he did was about protection. In the Inquisition, he tried to save everyone by turning them human so they could escape. It failed. In the rewrite, he saves everyone by making himself the scapegoat. He becomes the villain the story needs so the story can keep going. In the fan theory, Rob is the most important character in the show because he's the only one doing the work of keeping the show alive. Gumball entertains. Darwin supports. Nicole works. Richard exists. But Rob is the one who understands the machinery of their reality and actively maintains it. He's the stagecraft, the behind-the-scenes crew in front of the camera, the one who makes sure the lights stay on, even though the audience will never credit him for it. And he has to do this completely alone. Because if he told anyone, if he shared the burden, the void would destroy everything. I think about Rob a lot. I think about what it means to be the person who keeps the world running while everyone else gets to enjoy living in it. I think about the people behind every show, every movie, every piece of entertainment. The ones whose names scroll by in the credits that nobody reads. The ones who get forgotten. They're all Rob. And this show, this weird, beautiful, chaotic show about a blue cat, is the only one that's ever really acknowledged them. Before I move into individual character theories, I want to spend some time on something the fan community has been dissecting for years that ties directly into everything we've been talking about. And that's the theory about E. Slater. For those who don't know, E. Slater is a mysterious YouTube channel that appeared posting high-budget live-action Gumball content, professional visual effects, real actors, production value that absolutely should not come from a fan project. The channel was created on the same day The Inquisition first aired. The day the show ended, with Rob trying to turn everyone into live-action humans and failing, a channel appeared showing Gumball characters as live-action humans. The community split into two camps. One side says it's an incredibly dedicated fan project. The other says it's viral marketing for the Gumball movie. The evidence for the marketing theory is actually compelling. The professional quality, the timing, a joke in one video crediting Ben Bacalé as E. Slater's creator. None of this has been confirmed or denied by Bacalé or Cartoon Network, which is itself telling. But here's the theory layer I want to add. What if E. Slater is the continuation of Rob's plan? In The Inquisition, Rob tried to transform cartoon characters into live-action humans to save them from the void. He failed. Then, in the real world, a channel appeared showing these characters as live-action humans, as if Rob's plan succeeded in some parallel reality, as if some version of these characters actually made it out. I know it's a stretch, but the fact that the show's mythology makes this reading possible is exactly what makes this fan theory ecosystem unique. The boundary between the show and the real world is permeable. And speaking of permeable boundaries, there's a whole category of theories about Gumball's crossover episodes. The Puppets, Season 5, Episode 23, features characters from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, the web series known for its deeply disturbing children's show parody content. Darwin becomes addicted to a puppet show that's clearly DHMIS, and the puppet characters begin influencing his behavior. Within the meta framework, then the DHMIS characters are entities from another fictional reality bleeding into Gumball's. Different shows as different channels, the same way the Universal Remote's AV button switches between channels of the void. The Copycats, Season 5, Episode 12, confronts Miracle Star, a real Chinese cartoon widely considered a Gumball clone. The episode presents the knockoff characters as copyright-infringing duplicates. The show is literally addressing its own plagiarism within the fiction. And within the meta framework, if Elmore is a TV show and another show copies it, do the copied characters have their own void? Even The Boredom, Season 5, Episode 5, includes cameos from Clarence, Regular Show, and Uncle Grandpa, all Cartoon Network shows, all existing on the same network. Within the meta framework, the different shows sharing the same broadcast infrastructure. The fan theory this generates is kind of beautiful. All Cartoon Network shows exist in connected fictional realities, and characters can occasionally glimpse each other through the gaps, the static between channels, the moment between one show ending and another beginning. Let me bring us back to something more emotionally grounded. I want to talk about fan theories around specific relationships. The Gumball and Penny relationship is one the show treats with surprising sincerity. Penny Fitzgerald is a shape-shifting fairy who spent the first 2 seasons inside a peanut shell. The shell, Season 3, Episode 20, is where the shell cracks and she reveals her true form. She panics. She transforms uncontrollably. Dragon, wolf, gorgon, constellation of light. She's terrified of what people will think, and Gumball sees all of her forms and tells her she's amazing. He doesn't flinch. There's a fan theory that Penny's shape-shifting connects to the show's mixed media animation on a deeper level. Every other character is locked into one animation style. Gumball is always 2D. Tina is always CGI. Sussy is always live action. But Penny can become anything. She can shift between styles. She's the most free character in Elmore, the one person who isn't locked into a single way of being drawn. Her father kept her in the shell to prevent her from shapeshifting. Within the meta framework, that's a character trying to keep his daughter within a single, manageable animation style. Don't let her be too many things. Keep her contained. And Gumball broke the shell. He let the chaos out. And the show got richer for it. There's also a deeply weird theory about Larry Needlemeyer that has fascinated me. Larry works every single job in Elmore. Cashier at every store, waiter at every restaurant, pizza delivery, gas station, video store. Every service job held by one blue rock with stick figure limbs. In The Laziest, Season 1, Episode 11, it's established that if Larry stops working, Elmore collapses. The economy breaks down, fires start, society crumbles. He's holding civilization together through labor alone. The fan theory: Larry is the show's production crew. Every background job, every bit of set dressing, every piece of world maintenance that has to happen for the show to function, that's Larry. He's the animation team, the props master, the continuity supervisor. He does everything because someone has to. And the show only has budget for one character to fill all those roles. In The Question, Season 3, Episode 28, Larry is asked about the meaning of life. His response is an existential crisis. He realizes how repetitive and meaningless his existence is. He walks into the ocean, because when the person holding the world together finally stops to think about what they're doing, the weight destroys them. I think about Larry more than I probably should. He's the most invisible essential worker in fiction. There's a whole other dimension to the Larry theory that connects to the show's economic commentary. Gumball has a running theme about capitalism and labor that doesn't get enough discussion in the fan theory space. Larry works every job because Elmore's economy can't function without him, but he's not rewarded for it. Oh, the Wattersons routinely destroy his workplaces, steal from him, treat him as an inconvenience, and the show frames this as comedy, which is itself commentary. We laugh at the exploitation of workers the same way Elmore's citizens take Larry for granted. Within the meta framework, this has an extra layer. The show needs Larry to fill all these roles because creating a unique character for every background job would be expensive. Larry is a budget-saving measure that the show transformed into a character and then used that character to comment on how institutions use people. He exists because the show needed to cut corners, and his existence is the commentary on corner cutting. The show was produced by Studio SOY in Germany and Hanna-Barbera Studios Europe. Bocale has talked about how much labor goes into the mixed media approach. That Eric Fountain said, making the show involves a lot of rolling up our sleeves and working on things one frame at a time. The revival had young animators who grew up watching Gumball and got their first job working on their beloved property, and you can see their investment in every frame. Larry is those animators. He's the person doing the work one frame at a time, holding the world together, hoping someone appreciates it, even if the characters on screen never will. I also want to pause on something about the awesome store that I think feeds into a fan theory about commerce and fate in Elmore. The Awesome Store is where Richard bought Darwin as a regular fish. It's where he bought the evil turtle. It's where Rob got the universal remote. Everything that comes from this store changes reality. Darwin became sentient. And the turtle nearly killed the family. The remote nearly destroyed the universe. The fan theory is that the Awesome Store doesn't sell items. It sells narrative devices. Every product in that store is a plot point waiting to happen. The Shady Man doesn't need money. He needs the items to be deployed. He's distributing the tools of storytelling into the narrative, creating the catalysts that drive episodes. He's the writer's room, disguised as a shop. And when Rob takes over the store at the end of the rewrite, he isn't just inheriting a business. He's inheriting the role of story driver. He becomes the person responsible for seeding plot lines, distributing catalysts, making sure the narrative has fuel. He went from being a character the story didn't need to being the person who feeds the story. That's the most dramatic promotion in all of fiction. Now, I want to address a theory about whether Elmore's citizens are aware of each other's animation styles. In Elmore, characters drawn in completely different visual styles coexist. Gumball is 2D, Mr. Robinson is a puppet, Tina Rex is CGI, Banana Joe is a different kind of 2D. Every background is a photograph of a real location. Most of the time, characters treat each other normally regardless of style. But The World, Season 3, Episode 32, gives voices to background objects. The light bulb knows it will burn out. The pizza knows it will be eaten. They're aware of their nature. The theory extrapolates. Every character knows, on some level, what they are. The mixed media isn't just an aesthetic visible to the audience. It's the character's physical reality. The Gumball is made of drawn lines. Tina is made of polygons. And within the meta framework, this creates a hierarchy of realness. A photorealistic character is more real than a simple sketch. There's a pecking order of dimensional substance, and it maps onto social dynamics in uncomfortable ways. There's also the theory about Rachel Wilson, Tobias' sister, that the fan community has been discussing for years. Rachel appeared in Season 1 and then vanished completely. She hosted a party in The Party and had moments in other early episodes, and then she was simply gone. Nobody in the show mentioned her disappearance. The theory, of course, is that Rachel is in the void. She was erased the same way Molly was, for the same reason. She wasn't interesting enough to keep. But unlike Molly, nobody came to rescue her. Did Gumball and Darwin never noticed she was missing because she was never important enough for them to notice? Fans have spun this into darker territory, imagining Rachel trapped in the void, going mad from isolation, or sinking into depression over being forgotten. I've seen fan art of Rachel standing alone in the static, staring at nothing, waiting for a rescue that will never come. And it hits hard because the show's own logic supports it completely. The universe decides you're boring, you disappear, and nobody mourns you. That's just how Elmore works. And then there's the theory about what happened between the finale, Season 2, Episode 40, and Season 3. The finale is the Season 2 finale, and it's one of the most unique episodes in the series. It's the episode where all the consequences of the Wattersons' behavior across 2 seasons finally catch up with them. Every person they've wronged, every piece of property they've destroyed, every law they've broken, the bill comes due. The townspeople form an angry mob and attack the Watterson house. The episode ends with the family surrounded, their house destroyed, seemingly facing real, permanent consequences for the first time. And then Season 3 starts and everything's fine. No explanation, no resolution, just reset. The fan theory is that the void intervened. Between seasons, the void wiped everyone's memory of the finale. It reset the timeline. Because the consequences were too severe, if the Wattersons faced real accountability, the show would have to change fundamentally. The format would break, and breaking the format means the void. There's evidence for this in The Name, Season 5, Episode 7, where Gumball's subconscious is shown to contain memories from seasons 1 and 2, including events from the finale. So the memories aren't gone, they're buried. The void didn't delete them, it suppressed them. The characters are carrying the weight of their history, even if they can't consciously access it. This is another version of the show's central anxiety, the tension between episodic format and serialized consequences. Every sitcom struggles with this. Characters do terrible things, learn lessons, and then do the same terrible things next week because the format demands it. But Gumball takes this structural necessity and makes it a literal, metaphysical force. The universe requires the reset. Without it, the show dies. I also want to touch on a theory I encountered about the show's depiction of the internet that I think is underappreciated. The spin-offs, Season 6, Episode 29, features Rob hijacking the show's broadcast by holding Timmy, who is the physical embodiment of the internet, hostage. Rob forces the show to air spin-off concepts featuring different characters, trying to prove that the show could exist without Gumball. The fan theory here is that Rob wasn't just being petty. He was testing whether the show's format could survive a change in protagonist. If another character could carry the show, if Gumball wasn't essential, then maybe Gumball could be freed from his role. Maybe he could grow up. Maybe he could stop performing. Rob was trying to find an escape route for Gumball by proving that someone else could fill his spot. It's a theory that makes Rob even more sympathetic. Even when he's acting as the villain, even when he's disrupting the show, he might be trying to liberate the other characters from the same trap he's stuck in. He's the one who understands the prison, and he's testing the walls to find a crack. Alright, let me take us into the final stretch. I've been building toward one more theory that I want to give proper space to before we close. I want to talk about one more cluster of fan theories, and these are the ones that deal with individual characters in ways that the show supports, but never quite confirms. There's a popular theory about Nicole Watterson that I think adds real depth to her character. Nicole is, by any measure, the most competent person in Elmore. She holds down a job at the Rainbow Factory. She's a martial arts expert. She's effectively a single parent in terms of the actual labor of raising her family, since Richard is Richard. And she's shown, repeatedly, to have a temper so explosive that it borders on supernatural. Her eyes literally catch fire. She can punch through walls. She's terrifying. The fan theory, Nicole is the one character who is actively, constantly, fighting against the entropy of Elmore. She knows, on some instinctive level, that her world doesn't work the way it should. Things break too easily. Rules don't apply. Her husband is impossible. Her son creates disasters that would bankrupt a real family. And she holds it all together through sheer force of will. She's not just a mom. She's the structural integrity of the show itself. Without her, the Watterson family would collapse. And without the Wattersons, the show would collapse. And without the show, the void takes everything. This theory is supported by The Choices, Season 5, Episode 38, which shows Nicole's entire life history and reveals that at every critical juncture, she chose the harder, more selfless path. She chose Richard over a potentially easier life. She chose her family over her own ambitions. She chose to hold everything together when everything was pulling apart. The episode frames these choices as literally world-altering. The paths she didn't take lead to dramatically different realities. Nicole is Atlas, holding up the sky, and the sky doesn't thank her for it. Then there's the theory about Darwin that hits me in a completely different way. Darwin was a regular goldfish purchased by Richard from the Awesome Store. He was a pet, a small orange fish in a bowl. And then, one day he sprouted legs, developed lungs, learned to speak, and became a member of the family. The Origins, Season 3, Episode 38, tells this story, and it's presented as a heartwarming tale of a pet who loved his family so much, he evolved to be part of it. But the fan theory asks, why did Darwin evolve? In a world where the universe actively manages its characters, where things that aren't useful get sent to the void, Darwin's evolution wasn't natural. It was a casting decision. The show needed a second lead. Gumball needed a best friend, a sidekick, a straight man to play off. And so the universe took a fish and rebuilt him to fill that role. Darwin didn't choose to evolve. The narrative chose for him. And his unshakable loyalty to Gumball, his desperate optimism, and his constant effort to be good and kind and supportive, those aren't personality traits. They're character specifications. Darwin is who the show needs him to be, and if he ever stopped being that, the void would be waiting. I've seen people push back on this reading, saying it's too cynical, that Darwin's goodness is genuine, regardless of its origin. And maybe they're right. Maybe the beauty of Darwin is that even if the universe designed him to be the perfect sidekick, he turned that role into something truly loving. He took the cage he was given and filled it with real warmth. And that's its own kind of freedom. There's also a theory about Richard that I want to mention briefly, because it says something interesting about the show's structure. Richard is, by any normal standard, a terrible father. He's lazy, he's stupid, he's selfish, and he eats everything in sight. He breaks things constantly. The show acknowledges this openly. The Hero, Season 2, Episode 15, is an entire episode about Gumball and Darwin making fun of Richard, and then feeling terrible about it. The fan theory. Richard is the way he is because the show needs him to be. Sitcom dads are bumbling idiots. That's the archetype. Richard isn't stupid because of some in-universe explanation. He's stupid because the format demands it. And if he ever became competent, ever became a real, functional parent, the show's dynamic would change so dramatically that it might collapse. There's actually evidence for this in The Job, Season 2, Episode 11, where Richard gets a job as a pizza delivery man, and the mere act of Richard being productive starts destroying reality. The sky changes color. Objects start falling upward. The fabric of Elmore begins tearing apart. Richard having a job is so fundamentally incompatible with the show's universe that the universe literally cannot handle it. That's not just a joke about Richard being lazy. That's the show telling you that its characters are locked into their roles so tightly that deviating from them threatens existence itself. Richard can't have a job because Richard having a job breaks the format. And breaking the format means the void. Every character in Elmore is a prisoner of their archetype. The smart sister, the workaholic mom, the bumbling dad, the troublemaking protagonist, the loyal best friend, the villain. They're all performing roles that were assigned to them by a reality that will erase them if they stop performing. Let me linger on this for a moment because I think there's a fan theory here that doesn't get explored enough, and it's about one specific episode that demonstrates this imprisonment more powerfully than almost anything else in the series. The Money, Season 3, Episode 39, is the episode where the Wattersons run out of money. Like, completely. And when they do, the show itself starts breaking down. The animation gets cheaper, backgrounds simplify, colors flatten, characters start losing detail. By the end of the episode, the Wattersons are basically stick figures against a white background, because the show literally cannot afford to draw them properly anymore. The show is equating the family's financial status with its own production budget. When the Wattersons are broke, the show is broke. Then the in-universe economic crisis is a production crisis, and the resolution, the Wattersons getting their finances back on track, coincides with the animation returning to full quality. The budget literally flows back into the picture. This is the show telling you, explicitly, that the character's quality of life is dependent on the show's production health. If the show doesn't have resources, the characters don't have resources. If the show doesn't have money, the characters don't have money. Their reality is a direct function of the show's economic viability. And within the cancellation theory framework, this means that when the show's real-world budget gets threatened, when network executives cut funding, when production shifts studios, when the show moves from cable to streaming, the characters should feel it, and their world should get a little less detailed, a little less colorful, a little less alive. They might not know why, but they'd feel the world becoming thinner around them. I've also been meaning to talk about The Joy, Season 3, Episode 4, because it's one of the most disturbing episodes in the series, and it generates some fascinating theories. In this episode, Richard hugs Gumball and Darwin with so much joy that they become infected with a virus that spreads through physical contact. Infected characters develop rainbow-colored eyes, drool rainbow liquid, and mindlessly try to hug everyone they encounter. It spreads through the school like a zombie outbreak, presented as a found-footage horror film shot on a security camera. The episode is a parody of zombie movies, obviously, but the fan theory reframes it as something much darker. The joy virus isn't a disease. It's a programming error. It's what happens when the show's emotional register gets stuck on one setting. The characters are supposed to express a range of emotions across episodes. When the emotion locks on joy and can't change, the characters become grotesque. Their faces distort. Their behavior becomes mechanical. They lose their individuality and become a herd of identical, grinning, drooling husks. Within the meta framework, the joy virus is forced happiness. It's what happens when a kid's show is mandated to be relentlessly positive. Every character must be happy. Every scene must be joyful. No sadness allowed. No complexity. No depth. Just pure, undifferentiated, mandatory joy. And the show depicts this as body horror, because forced happiness is horrifying. A world where negative emotions are literally pathologized and eliminated is a dystopia, not a utopia. The episode ends with Miss Simeon, the only character who wasn't infected, filing a report to the school board. She describes the outbreak in clinical terms. The security footage is logged, and then nothing comes of it. The next episode, everyone's fine. No investigation, no follow-up. The whole incident is quietly forgotten, which is itself a commentary. Horror happens in Elmore all the time, but the episodic format demands that nothing permanently changes. The joy virus infects the entire school, and by next week, nobody mentions it. Not because they've healed, but because the show has moved on. Their trauma is irrelevant. The format doesn't accommodate long-term consequences, so the consequences just disappear. Sound familiar? Oh, it's the void again. Not the literal dimension this time, but the same principle. Things that are inconvenient to the narrative get erased. Experiences that would change characters permanently get wiped. The format protects itself by forgetting. There's another episode I want to bring up in this context. The Night, Season 5, Episode 22, because the fan theory surrounding it adds a beautiful piece to the puzzle. This is the episode where we see what different characters dream about, and the dreams are revealing in ways the show mostly plays for comedy, but that the fan community has mined for deeper meaning. Darwin dreams about the end of the world, not metaphorically, literally. He dreams about Elmore being destroyed while he watches helplessly. Gumball dreams about his insecurities, about being exposed, about failing, about not being good enough. Sussie's dream is arguably the most fascinating. She breaks the fourth wall completely, addressing the viewer directly in a way that's both hilarious and genuinely eerie. The fan theory: the dreams are the characters' subconscious minds processing what they can't consciously acknowledge. Darwin dreams about the end of the world because, on some level, he knows the void is coming. Gumball dreams about his inadequacy because he knows, somewhere deep down, that his existence is contingent on being entertaining. Their subconscious minds are trying to warn them about things their conscious minds have been forced to forget. And Sussie's dream, where she talks to the viewer, is the moment where the character closest to real reaches through the screen and acknowledges us. She's the live-action element. And she's the most tangible, most physical, most real character in the show. And in her dream, she can see us. She knows we're watching, and she doesn't seem frightened by it. She seems almost amused. Maybe because Sussie, as the most real character, understands something the others don't. She knows that being watched is what keeps them alive. The audience's attention is the opposite of the void. We are the broadcast signal. As long as we're watching, the static can't take them. That's a comforting thought, isn't it? That our attention matters. That watching a show isn't passive consumption, it's an act of preservation. Every time you put on an episode of Gumball, you're keeping the void at bay. You're broadcasting a signal that says, these characters matter. This world is worth sustaining. Don't let the static win. And the show knows this. It has always known this. And it keeps telling us, over and over, through meta-commentary and fourth wall breaks and existential horror dressed up as slapstick, that the world we're watching is not as cheerful as it looks. I want to take one more detour before we land, because there's a theory about what happens after the rewrite that I find genuinely chilling. In the Season 7 finale, Rob takes over the awesome store and accepts the mission of protecting Elmore from the void. He has the script editing laptop, he has the van, he has the tools. But the shady man tells him something before leaving. If things go wrong, there's a button in the middle of the steering wheel. Rob presses it. It teleports him back to Elmore. And the shady man walks through a door into what appears to be a paradise dimension he bought with the money from his store sales. He wishes Rob good luck. The door closes. The fan theory: the shady man escaped the show. He found a way out of the fiction. He's the one character who truly achieved what Rob tried to do in the Inquisition. He got to the other place, and he left the most thankless job in existence: guardian of a fictional world, to the person least equipped emotionally to handle it. Because the shady man understood that being the protector of a world that might cease to exist at any moment is a lonely, endless, crushing responsibility. And the only person who'd accept it is someone who has nothing else. Rob is now alone in the awesome store, alone with the knowledge that his world is fiction, alone with the responsibility of keeping everyone alive. And if the show gets canceled again, if ratings drop, if the network loses interest, if the audience moves on, the void will come back. Rob will be the first to know and the last to fall. You know what makes this even more devastating? The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball won the Best TV/Media Children Award at the 53rd Annie Awards for the rewrite. The episode where a broken, forgotten character accepts eternal solitary guardianship of a world that doesn't know he's saving it. That's the one the industry recognized as the best. And I think that's because, on some level, everyone in animation recognizes what that story is about. It's about the people who keep the lights on, the people who do the work nobody sees, and the people who love something enough to sacrifice everything for it, and who do it knowing they'll never be thanked. There's a particular shot in the rewrite that stays with me. After Rob puts on the Shady Man's cloak and becomes the new keeper of the store, there's a moment where he stands in front of a mirror, and his reflection shows him as he was before the void, whole, undamaged, the regular Cyclops kid with auburn hair and a backpack. The kid he could have been if the universe hadn't decided he was worthless. He looks at it for about 2 seconds, and then he turns away and gets to work. I've rewatched that 2-second shot maybe 40 times. It says everything the show has ever wanted to say about Rob, about what the world does to people it doesn't need, and about what those people do in return. Let me also address one more theory that I've been sitting on, because it connects to the revival in a way that I think is important. There's been significant discussion in the fan community about whether the Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball is a Season 7 or a genuinely new show. Bacalé and the team have explicitly called it a spin-off, not a direct continuation. It has a different title, new voice actors for some characters, a slightly different visual sensibility. The fan theory: the revival is a different show within the Gumball meta framework. It's not Season 7, it's an adjacent fiction. The original Amazing World of Gumball ended when the Void swallowed Elmore in the Inquisition. That show is over. The Wonderfully Weird World is a new show built on the same foundation, but it's a different broadcast, a different signal. And Rob's job isn't to protect the old show, it's to protect this new one, to make sure that whatever comes next survives. This reading is supported by some of the structural choices in the revival. The international airing order of episodes was changed from what Hulu presented. The rewrite was moved from the finale position in some markets. The new showrunner, Matt Lazell, has talked about wanting to do as good and even better than what fans were already familiar with. Eric Fountain, the series director, described the process as seeing how the show was made from the inside, getting to peek behind the curtain. Behind the curtain. That's literally what we've been talking about all night. The show about looking behind the curtain of fiction now has creators talking about looking behind its own curtain. But the meta-ness goes all the way down. And Bacalé himself said something in an interview with TV Kids that I find quietly revelatory. He said, "What kept some of the old fans watching was the fact that it could be funny for an adult to watch. It's always been my dream that people would watch it as a family. I have very fond memories of watching old Looney Tunes cartoons with my dad, and the two of us laughing out loud. That's a nice thing to experience as a family." This is the creator of the show telling you that his dream was connection, shared laughter, families together. And he built that dream inside a world haunted by erasure, populated by characters who might not be real, threatened constantly by a void of nothingness. The warmth isn't despite the darkness. The warmth is what makes the darkness bearable. I think that's the heart of every fan theory we've discussed tonight. At the bottom of every dark reading, every existential interpretation, every theory about characters being imprisoned by their archetypes or threatened by cancellation, there's this core of warmth. The theories matter because the characters matter. We wouldn't spend hours theorizing about the Void if we didn't care about the people the Void might consume. We wouldn't obsess over Rob's arc if we didn't feel something genuine for a fictional Cyclops who just wanted someone to remember his name. The darkness in Gumball's fan theories is the shadow cast by how much light the show generates. You can only fear losing something if it means something to you. And Gumball, for all its chaos and absurdity and philosophical dread, means something to a lot of people. And I started this video by asking what happens when the most important character is someone nobody remembers. And I think, after everything we've discussed, the answer might be darker than I initially thought. Because in the amazing world of Gumball, forgetting isn't an accident, it's a function. The world forgets on purpose. It erases people who threaten the status quo. It wipes memories that would break the illusion. It maintains a cheerful surface by burying everything difficult in a dimension of static. And we do the same thing. We forget background characters. We forget the people who maintain the things we enjoy. We forget that every story has losers, characters who didn't get to be the hero, who didn't get the screen time, who existed only to fill a scene and then were discarded. Well, we consume entertainment without thinking about what it costs the people inside it. Because of course, they're not real. They're just characters. It doesn't matter. But Gumball asks, what if it does matter? What if the background character has feelings? What if the discarded design has pain? What if the canceled show screams as the static closes in? I don't have an answer. The show doesn't give us one either, and I think that's deliberate. There's one final fan theory I want to leave you with. It's the one I keep coming back to, the one that feels most true, even though, or maybe because, it can never be confirmed. The theory is about the show's ending, not the Inquisition, not the rewrite. I mean the actual, final, permanent ending of the amazing world of Gumball, whenever it comes. The theory says, when the show truly ends, when the last episode airs, and the credits roll for the final time, and no revival is coming, and no movie will save them, the Void will win. It has to, because the Void is the absence of the show, and the show can only fight the Void as long as it exists. The moment the cameras stop, the moment the last viewer turns away, the static will swallow everything. Gumball, Darwin, Nicole, Richard, Aeneas, Penny, Rob, Barbara, all of them. They'll join the mullet and the laser disc and Pluto in the infinite static, and nobody will remember them unless we do. Unless we keep talking about them, keep theorizing about them, keep falling asleep to videos about them at 2 in the morning. Unless the fan community acts as a bulwark against the Void, a collective memory that refuses to let these characters be forgotten. Maybe that's why Bacalé keeps coming back. In an interview with Animation Magazine ahead of the revival, he said he was surprised by the appetite for a return. He mentioned that the show was made in England, where it wasn't famous at all, and he was shocked that people still watched it enough to justify another season. Maybe the reason the show keeps surviving is because we keep remembering it. We keep it relevant. We keep it from being a mistake. I want to sit with this point for a minute, because I think there's something genuinely important here about the relationship between a fan community and the art they love. And it connects to one more theory I haven't mentioned yet. There's a theory, I've seen it discussed mostly on Reddit and Tumblr, that every piece of Gumball fan content is itself a defense against the Void. Every fan art, every fan fiction, every theory video, every TikTok analysis, every meme, every cosplay. Each one is a declaration that these characters exist outside the show, that they've broken containment, that they live in our heads and our hearts and our conversations, and the Void can't reach them there. Think about that in the context of what Rob tried to do in the Inquisition. He tried to transform the characters into a form that could survive outside the show, live-action humans who could escape to the other place. He failed. But the fan community succeeds at a version of this every day. When someone draws Gumball in a completely new art style, though they've given him a form that exists outside the show's animation. When someone writes a fan fiction about the Wattersons, they've created a version of these characters that lives in prose, independent of any broadcast signal. When someone makes a theory video about the Void, they're discussing a concept from the show in a space the show itself can't reach. Fan content is, in this reading, the ultimate form of character rescue. It's the thing Rob was trying to do, getting the characters to the other place, achieved not through in-universe magic, but through the raw creative energy of people who care. And the show seems to know this. The Shippening, Season 6, Episode 25, is an entire episode about fanfiction. Sarah finds a notebook that makes whatever is written in it come true, and she uses it to write shipping fanfiction about the show's characters. The characters are forced to enact romantic scenarios that they never would have chosen for themselves. It's played for comedy, but the implications within the meta framework are significant. Fan content has the power to reshape the character's reality. What fans write becomes, in some sense, real. Bacalé himself acknowledged this connection to the fan community. In an interview with Telltale TV ahead of the revival, he said about the revival, "This is what we're trying to do with the shipping. We're trying to sort of have this time capsule of what the fans were trying to do with their original creations. The show is incorporating fan energy back into itself. The circuit is closed. Fans imagine the characters in new situations, and the show acknowledges those imaginations. And the fans respond to the acknowledgement, and the loop continues. That loop is the anti-Void. It's a perpetual motion machine of caring. As long as the loop keeps turning, as long as fans make content and the show responds and fans make more content, the static can't close in. The signal stays strong. I know I keep coming back to this point, but I think it's the key to understanding everything Gumball is trying to do. The show isn't just a show. It's a conversation about what shows are, what they do to the people in them, and what happens when the people watching them decide to push back against the mechanisms of forgetting. Every fan theory we've discussed tonight, the void, the meta-awareness, Rob's arc, Barbara's paintings, the architecture of cancellation, all of it comes back to this fundamental question. Can love survive format? Can genuine emotional connection persist inside a structure designed to discard it? I think the answer the show gives is it can try. It won't be easy. The format will fight back. The universe will try to erase what's inconvenient. Characters will be forced into roles they didn't choose. Memories will be wiped. Lessons will be forgotten. And the static will always be there, just on the other side of the screen, waiting. But trying is enough. Gumball tries. Darwin tries. Rob, in his broken, desperate, lonely way, tries harder than any of them. And we try too. Every time we hit play. Every time we lose 2 hours to a fan theory rabbit hole. Every time we fall asleep listening to someone talk about a cartoon about a blue cat. Maybe that's the most important fan theory of all. Not a theory about the show, but a theory about us. The theory that by watching, by caring, by refusing to let these characters fade into static, we're doing something that matters. Not just for them, for ourselves, for the part of us that believes stories are worth fighting for. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's always been enough. I want to leave you with one last image before we go. In the very first episode of The Amazing World of Gumball, the DVD, which previewed on May 3rd, 2011, the Wattersons are just a family trying to return a DVD to the store before they get fined. That's it. That's the whole plot. No void, no meta-narrative, no existential dread, just a blue cat, a goldfish with legs, a genius rabbit, a lazy dad, and a tired mom trying to avoid a late fee. And there's something beautiful about that simplicity. Before all the theories and the mythology and the layers of meaning, there was just a family, a weird, broken, wonderful family doing their best to get through the day. That's the core the show returns to, no matter how deep the philosophy gets. That's what the void can never truly touch. Because underneath the meta commentary and the existential horror and the prophetic banana paintings, Gumball is about family. It's about the messy, frustrating, absurd, infuriating, life-sustaining miracle of loving people who drive you absolutely crazy. Every fan theory we've discussed tonight exists in orbit around that core. The void is scary because it threatens the family. Rob is tragic because he doesn't have one. Barbara's prophecies are haunting because they might take the family away. And the meta-awareness is unsettling because it reminds us that the family isn't real in the way we want it to be. But love doesn't need to be real to be felt. Connection doesn't need to be physical to be genuine. I feel something for these characters. You feel something too, or you wouldn't still be listening. And as long as that feeling persists, as long as someone somewhere is putting on an episode of Gumball at 2 in the morning because the world feels too big and too scary, and they need something warm and weird and wonderful to keep them company, then the void hasn't won. Not today, not yet. And maybe that's the real theory. Maybe we're not just the audience. Maybe we're the force that holds the void at bay. Maybe every rewatch, every fan theory video, every late night YouTube essay is a tinfoil hat, protecting the show's memory from being erased. Banana Barbara said, "There is no future," but she was painting from inside the show. She couldn't see us. She couldn't see the millions of people who would still be talking about a cartoon about a blue cat decades after it started. She couldn't know that we would refuse to forget. And I don't think we're supposed to know either. I think that's the point. The mystery is the point. The show asks questions about reality, about fiction, about what it means to exist inside a story, and it leaves those questions hanging in the air like static. Because the moment you have all the answers, the mystery dies. And when the mystery dies, maybe the show dies with it. So let's keep the questions alive. Let's keep theorizing. Let's keep falling down this rabbit hole and finding new chambers we never knew existed. Because as long as we're asking questions about Elmore, Elmore is real. As long as we remember Rob, Rob isn't nobody. As long as we're here, watching, thinking, caring, the static can't win. That's my theory anyway. Take it or leave it. But if you're still here, if you've listened to this whole thing from the provocative question at the beginning to this quiet moment at the end, then I think you already agree with me. You already know that caring about fiction isn't foolish. You already know that the characters who live in our heads are, in every way that matters, alive. And that's the final fan theory. The one the show never states, but constantly implies. The one that exists in the space between the screen and the viewer, in the static between channels, in the gap between the end of one episode and the start of the next. The theory is this: we are what makes it real. And maybe that's the real reason there is no future in Banana Barbara's paintings. Because the future isn't written yet. It's being written right now by everyone who watches, by everyone who cares, by everyone who keeps the signal alive. The future of Gumball isn't on a canvas in a garage in Elmore. It's in this video. It's in your rewatch queue. It's in the conversation you'll have tomorrow when you tell someone about this weird show that's secretly about the nature of fiction itself. The future is us. And as long as we're here, the static can wait. And honestly, I started making this video because I thought it'd be fun to talk about Gumball fan theories for a couple of hours. And I didn't expect it to change how I think about storytelling, about what we owe to the characters we create and consume and discard, about the weird, beautiful, terrifying relationship between a show and its audience. But here we are, and I'm grateful you're here too. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying this long. Thank you for caring about a cartoon deeply enough to listen to someone ramble about it in the dark. It means more than you know. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. Not for the algorithm, not for the numbers, because every person who subscribes is another person keeping these characters alive. Another person saying, I remember, I'm still watching. The static hasn't won yet. Good night, everyone. Sleep well.